What's up, Mech fans, and welcome back to the channel. So today we are talking about another episode of Mobile Suit Gundam GQuuuuuuX. This is episode number 8, titled Falling on the Moon, and as per usual, we're going to be doing a full spoiler review and breakdown. But before we dive into all of that, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you're a fan of mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also, head on down to the comments section below. Let me know your thoughts on this episode if you've seen it. It's been off an early week at this point, so you probably should have seen it, especially if you are watching a spoiler review and breakdown. And without further ado, let us dive into the plot synopsis and overview of what goes down in this episode. During the mission to divert Solomon, Char uses it as cover to kill Kycelia, though he is distracted by a Federation mobile suit piloted by his sister Artasia and becomes trapped in the collapsing asteroid base. Shalia overhears Char talking to someone moments before Solomon is engulfed by the Zeg Nova, while Kycelia is notified that a test subject held by Granada, codenamed the Rose of Sharon, has disappeared. In the present, Nyaan is escorted around Granada by Xavier, who introduces her to his classmate Miguel and the Gundam gfred mobile suit. Nyaan learns his previous pilots were killed prior to testing, and is informed by Xavier of the distrust and arms race between Kycelia and Giran. She later meets with Miguel and exposes him of being a spy for Giran behind the mysterious deaths. Miguel explains that it's to prevent the gfred turning its pilots into Diablos, when the gfred Psychomu responds to Nyaan's presence and kills him. Kycelia learns of the incident and strives to further train Nyaan in her goal to activate the Yomantho and replicate the Zeg Nova, as Xavier tells Nyaan about the GQuuuuuuX's escape to Earth. Meanwhile, an engineer named Shirazu discusses with Terza Leone on the rapid development of the Yomantho and gfred, and they board a flight bound for Granada. So that should give you a good overview of what this episode entailed, and going back to the first 3 episodes, this is once again one of those episodes where I had seen most of it. Now, I hadn't seen the entirety of it, because about half of this episode is flashing back to UC 0079 and the final battle of the 1 Year War, and then the other half is going into present day and kind of seeing how things are going on with Nyaan and Xavier, like following on from episode 7. Let's kind of talk about a lot of the stuff that goes down in the first half of this episode, which is essentially like a more substantial version of what's very briefly mentioned in episode 2 concerning the end of the 1 Year War, the disappearance of Char. And I guess the first thing to start off with in terms of these discussion points is that we do get the introduction of Artasia / Sayla Mass, of course a major character within the original Mobile Suit Gundam series and the sister of Char. I always thought it was a little bit longer, but it's like literally like a 30-second sequence kind of thing. Like she shows up, they exchange blows, and she disappears. We don't know whether she's dead or alive. However, the fact we don't see a body, the fact that it's implied that she escapes, there is no way that she does not show up again in this series, because you don't do something like that to never kind of pay it off. Now, maybe they do, and maybe they don't pay it off in any way, and maybe it's just kind of more of a wink and nod to those that have seen the original Gundam series, so they'd understand the inclusion of that character. But I've got to assume that if she's still alive, which she probably is, she's going to show up in some capacity. Maybe she's a major part of the Earth Federation forces, and as we know, the GQuuuuuuX is heading for Earth, and that's where another character is going to show up as well. So the pieces are in place for her to show up in some capacity. So I think she's alive. I think we're going to see her again in this series, because of course now we've got Char back in the mix kind of as well. I think they've got to do something there. They've got to show a little bit more of this character, because of course, like, a major part of the original Gundam series, but beyond that, they had to kind of write Sayla out of most of the following UC series, just because the voice actress was never properly available and they didn't want to recast. So this seems like an ideal time to kind of put Sayla back in like the forefront of people's minds in terms of Gundam. And it just, to not do it would be a missed opportunity, especially since we never, really got like a substantial role for Sayla following on from the events of the 1 Year War. The biggest takeaway from this sequence, though, is the Rose of Sharon. This was where I initially first heard that phrase being thrown around, but of course, episode 7 does mention it. In terms of the series, that comes before being shown this. And it seems like next episode is definitely going to pay that off, because the title of next episode is the Rose of Sharon. And it's basically implied that this is like a test subject within the Flanagan Institute, so obviously related to new type kind of stuff. Now, I've kind of said before that there's essentially like 4 different people this could potentially be. You've got like your main trio, could have been one of them, and then you've got Lala Sune. It seems pretty obvious that it's going to be Lala. That always made the most sense, and the fact that we're getting introduced to Lala next episode, which I guess minor spoilers for the end, like preview for next episode, But yeah, we're getting introduced to Lala next episode, so she is probably the Rose of Sharon. And it makes sense. She's like a very powerful new type. So yeah, I mean, I guess we have like who this Rose of Sharon is. We have the answer to that now, which is pretty cool. And of course, very excited to see that character show up next episode and see how she incorporates into the plot, because she'll probably play a very, very big role in these last few episodes. I also don't think this is the last time we're going to revisit this era, because there are still unanswered questions here. What happened to Char? Even though he kind of shows up at the end of this episode, so we know he's around, we don't know exactly what went down, because we hear stuff over the radio and him talking to someone. We don't know who that is. We can kind of assume that maybe it's Lala through, the new type Flash, Kira type thing. But at the end of the day, we haven't seen it. We don't know the full context of it. So there's still more to be explored. We also need to know how Shuji gets hold of the Red Gundam. We need to know where Char kind of disappears to. And, there's kind of like a point of view type of thing we need of Char within that particular sequence, which we don't get here. So we're probably going to go back to the 1 Year War in this final battle. Probably not next episode, but I would guess like either the episode after that or maybe even the episode after that. Now though, let's get on to all of the new stuff, the present day stuff within Granada. And one thing I want to say is that I love the visual style of this. There's one particular sequence where Xavier is driving Nyaan around and kind of on, I don't want to say highway, but it's sort of like a tunnel a little bit. The way that it's kind of framed and visually, the way it looks with the lighting and all that kind of stuff, very much reminds me of like a Nightcore type of aesthetic. And in fact, actually reminded me of like a sequence in Part Labor 2, where a lot of the characters are driving in a car and it's night. I just love that kind of aesthetic. It almost like evokes this feeling of peacefulness, which I always really enjoy. Yeah, that's just something I wanted to mention within this whole present day sequence that I thought visually and aesthetically it was really pleasing. Let's talk about the gfred though, essentially the GQuuuuuuX Unit 2, and I want to give you guys a little bit of an explanation for those that don't understand the naming conventions behind this stuff, because I initially didn't, but I saw some stuff floating around where people have basically said that there's actually logic to why this mobile suit is called Fred. The reasoning behind it, the naming convention behind it, something to do with computer names and such, where they kind of use it as like numbers. It's like a binary coding type of thing. I'm not 100% sure of the full context, but essentially it would go Quux, like QUX, and then from there, eventually we do get to QU whatever X for the GQuuuuuX name, which does actually have another name within like the whole computer programming stuff. But then essentially the 7th number within there is Fred. So that's why this is called the gfred. This is why it's like the new Unit 2 version of the GQuuuuuX. And when you look at it, it very much looks the same. The only difference really is the fact that it's got a different head design. And then with that head design, you do have different bits. I like the look of it. It very much like goes further into that Evangelion aesthetic type of thing, because I look at this and it looks a little bit more reminiscent to like your Unit 2, which I guess kind of makes sense because this is a Unit 2 to some degree. But also it's very reminiscent of maybe Unit 1 in terms of its color scheme. And it couldn't be more obvious because it's purple and green. There's some other colors in there. There's a little bit of orange, a little bit of like a lighter blue color, but generally the more standout colors of this are the same colors as the Ava Unit 2. So it's obviously trying to pay homage to that, which isn't a bad thing because let's face it, we all knew going into this series that it was going to heavily draw a lot of influence and aesthetic, like visuals and design of mobile suits and such from Evangelion. So it's of no surprise that one of them uses the same color scheme as the most iconic one from that series. Not only is it visually reminiscent of Ava Unit 1 though, from a kind of perspective of how it operates, it's also quite similar. You look at the thing that it does within this episode where it gains a little bit of autonomy. I know it's kind of controlled by Nyaan from like outside of the mobile suit, but the way that it turns its head, it very much reminds me of an Evangelion unit. And of course we've seen like within the opening that the GQuuuuuX does have teeth that do open in that opening, so presumably that's going to happen somewhere within this series. So yeah, it's obvious that they're taking and pulling a lot from Evangelion and implementing it into here, but also I think it fits because it's not like Gundam's never done this type of stuff before where they sort of like make something look a little bit scary. Go back to G Gundam, for example, the Devil Gundam, that thing has teeth and such. So it's not like out of the realm of possibility for Gundam. It's just that I guess now people are kind of associating it with something outside of Gundam. They kind of see it as a problem, which I personally don't. I think is a really cool idea. If the GQuuuuuuX kind of goes full Ava Unit 1 Berserk mode, I'm going to have no complaints. I think that would be sick as hell to watch. But yeah, I love the design of this thing. And I'm very excited for it to eventually get a model kit because inevitably it will. All it's going to require is retooling of the GQuuuuuX high grade and then a different head design. So inevitably that thing's going to come out sooner rather than later. In fact, as of me recording this video, and maybe by the time this has gone up, we are actually getting a new Bandai hobby announcement kind of thing. So we'll probably see it show up there. Another really interesting thing made reference to in this episode is this whole idea of Diablos. I think this is just more of like an in-universe slang nickname kind of thing for essentially someone that's like corrupted by piloting a mobile suit. Comparable to the name of witches from Witch from Mercury, that's essentially like the in-universe slang type of name that they've given to the people that are able to operate Gundams. I don't think it's like anything to really overthink. I think it's simply just that is kind of like an in-universe nickname given to the people that will pilot these mobile suits and kind of be corrupted by them in a way, which I think is really cool. I do like the name of Diablos as well, because like that essentially evokes feeling of hell and devils and all that kind of stuff, and so it's kind of demonic. I think that's a really cool idea, particularly if you have, you know, the GQuuuuuuX kind of unlocking and having teeth and all this kind of stuff in a way that kind of looks and evokes a feeling of being demonic. So it all kind of adds up and makes a lot of sense. Also, if we're going to tie it a little bit back to Evangelion as well, of course, that series has an abundance of like religious imagery. It kind of ties a lot of that back and kind of, you know, creates some links thematically between those two things, which I think is really, really cool. And again, this is just for me to say that I think the whole naming convention of Diablos is very, very cool. Last but not least, though, let's talk about the ending of this episode, where we get the kind of reveal that Char's back. Now, it's not outright stated, this could not be Char, but you look at this guy, like, he is Char. Like, come on, like, there's no way that this guy is not Char Aznable. Under a different name, of course, he's now called Shirazu. But when I look at this particular scene, this is not to say that this is not Char and it's someone else, because I feel like that's not true. But when you look at the way he interacts with the other character in this scene, the way that he presents himself, he's a lot quieter in terms of his personality. He's a little bit more subdued. He doesn't feel like Char does. And when you look at Char throughout, you know, all the different iterations of him being, you know, known as Char Aznable, then being known as Quattro Regina, he still kind of has the same personality. But I look at this guy here, and maybe it's just this particular scene, but I thought he just felt too subdued to be the Char Aznable we all know and love. Here's my little bit of a theory, is that this guy is evidently Char Aznable, but he doesn't remember anything. He's completely memory wiped, and now he is literally a different person. But physically, he is, of course, Char Aznable. That could just be a little bit of a theory of mine, and I feel like that would be a bit too much kind of to add on to the story and explain all that kind of stuff. So maybe it's just this particular scene. Maybe, you know, he is still the Char Aznable we know. Maybe he's just trying to give off a different personality, so he's not, you know, mistaken for Char Aznable, because he's probably still trying to be undercover and stuff. And maybe this is all just a, you know, a rouse to try and, you know, get his revenge, which he still needs, because Kaisili is still alive, Giran's still alive, the Zabis are still very much at the forefront of this world, so Char still needs his revenge, and inevitably that's what this whole series is going to come down to, is him probably trying to enact that revenge, along with, you know, maybe Lala, maybe Charlie will be involved, and Machu and all this kind of stuff, and it'll be a big battle. That's what we're expecting, and it's going to be exciting. There we have it though, that was episode 8 of Mobile Suit Gundam GQuuuuuuX, titled Falling on the Moon. Before I get out of here, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you are a fan of mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also, like I said earlier, head on down to the comments section below. Let me know your thoughts on this episode. What was your favourite moment within it? Did you prefer seeing the 1 year war again, or did you like the present day stuff? And what do you think of this new Char Aznable that we've got here? Do you think that he does remember everything? Do you think he's just trying to hide stuff? Or do you think he has genuinely lost his entire memory and personality? Thank you once again for tuning into Mecha Chat today. I'll see you guys next time.